WRHU. Radio Hofstra University.
Or 88.7 FM WRHU. I'm Max Zach. As we continue our Alum of the Week series, this week we are joined by Spring 2011 graduate Alex Santiago. Alex, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Max.
So first question here, just so we can get to know you a little bit more. What do you do at RHU, and now what are you doing in your professional career as well?
Okay, well, I joined RHU in December of 2009, so as a junior. Took a little bit of time before I joined the station, but I joined for the sports department, did a lot of engineering, also got to do some of the music stuff because, you know, as the side gig, I guess you can call it. Did a lot of engineering, that was the first year we started covering the Islanders, that next summer or the next fall. So I got to do a lot of working with Chris King in the studio, working with then the first Islanders producer, Melissa Rath. So a lot of the communication there. Got to do a little bit of paneling towards the end of my senior year. My first and only onsite was a doubleheader for softball that turned into the clincher of the CAA. So it was pretty cool to have my one and only play-by-play be an Olivia Galati doubleheader where she just absolutely dominated for 14 innings. Was one of the best pitchers in Hofstra history. So that's what I did a lot of. I went in to be on air, but I started to really love the behind the scenes stuff. And that's what kind of led me to my post-Hofstra career. Very quickly out of Hofstra, as I was graduating, I got an interview at SiriusXM. Started doing a broadcast, like the play-by-play editor there to get a lot of like NFL games on air, and just kind of made my mark calling in highlights and, you know, really following the storylines. So that allowed me to move up to the newsroom where I got to cut highlights, work with talent, and then ultimately led me to helping launch NBA radio as a board op and AP on the weekends. And now I work at ESPN 5 years later. Been a decade, been working in radio, and I owe it all to RHU, just kind of giving me that all-around background and kind of opening my eyes to things that, you know, most people don't realize come with broadcast journalism. Everyone just thinks it's, if you can speak, you're going to get on camera and you're going to read whatever they tell you. But there's just so much more to it. And I owe everything that I've done in the last 10 years to the year and a half I had there, kind of learning from my peers and from, you know, all of the great teachers and the late great Joe. Just a lot of really good people there.
No, I definitely get that, at least with the behind the scenes stuff, because I'm in the same boat as you. Like when I found out about it, I'm like, oh, this is actually a lot more fun actually in a little bit. But I have to ask now, kind of the next thing. You said you joined RHU a little later, you know, only a year there. So I guess two-parter question here. What made you come to Hofstra in the first place? And then what also made you make that jump to RHU? Because it's a bit different, because you hear a lot of people, I did it my freshman year. I did it the spring of my freshman year. So a bit of a different angle here on coming in as a junior. Yeah,
so I knew from about 4 or 5 that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in sports. I got my love of baseball from my grandmother, who watched the Yankees when she was in Puerto Rico. My dad the same way. Growing up, there wasn't a lot of females to kind of look up to, but one of my favorites, and still to this day, is Susan Waldman. So I knew that there was a path for me. I didn't know what that path looked like. I'm born and raised in New York, so I knew I kind of wanted to stay in the New York area with all the opportunities there. My family was there, a very close-knit family. So when it came time to decide about schools for broadcast journalism, I had 3 that I was kind of looking at: Syracuse, Quinnipiac, and Hofstra. Never made it to Syracuse because I cannot do snow in May. The potential of having snow on my birthday was unacceptable to me. And coming from New York, I'm not a driver. I wasn't a driver. My family wasn't. So I wanted something kind of close. Never made it to Quinnipiac. The minute I stepped on Hofstra's campus, I knew that's where I needed to be. But I also knew I wanted to be in broadcast journalism. So that decision to kind of declare my major the minute I walked in, December 2007 or fall 2007 was very easy for me. But I also knew I wanted to get a lot of the basic stuff out of the way without any kind of, not distractions, because obviously I was there to get a job after, but I needed to work. I needed to save some money. So part of it was okay, what can I knock out of the way early enough without any kind of additives that would get in the way of my studies? And that's one of them. Some days I regret not joining that place the day I stepped in there, because it was the best year and a half of my college career, but I wouldn't trade what I did in those years or 18 months or whatever it was for anything. So it's not really a regret. Everyone has a different path. I know people who started day one who don't do anything close to what they wanted to do, or thought they were going to want to do after Hofstra. Some of them left sports behind the day they graduated. I've worked at SiriusXM. I got experience at another local radio station with a bunch of people I worked at Hofstra. That was a train wreck, but a great learning experience. And I've worked at ESPN doing a lot of amazing things. So it's just one of those things that, like, I use those 18 months every second I took advantage of it, where maybe some people might have taken a couple years off at RHU to kind of just, oh, this is fun, kind of explore themselves. I knew what I wanted to do. So that was really my thinking. I tried to join a little bit earlier than I did, and things kind of fell through. So I could have gotten maybe another year in, but it worked out. We lost football a day after I signed the contract. And then 3 days later, they're like, oh, but we're going to start covering the Islanders. And I was like, okay, sure. So it all kind of fell into place, and I made very well sure that come that following semester, I was going to be as involved in the Islanders as possible. And I wasn't a huge hockey fan. It was that fourth of very, way down the list to number 4. And I can honestly say a decade later, I love everything about the Islanders. So it's been nice to kind of see where you guys have taken it, and that it's still going strong, especially in these days. So anytime I hear WRHU, I get really, really proud. And so could I have asked for more years? Sure, but it was perfect.
You guys definitely set up Islanders for us that we use now. So we thank you guys for kind of putting some groundwork in that we can build from. But you talked about it really briefly. You beat me to my own question a little bit. So you say you use WRHU every day, the stuff you learned in your professional career. What would you say maybe the 2-3 biggest things that WRHU taught you that you take to your professional career right
now? Definitely one of the biggest ones, and still something I struggle with, and I think everyone does, is time management. Just the fact that we were students first, you have to remember you're a person first when you're working. So especially in the last 6 months, I've been lucky enough to be able to work from home during all of this, and we've just started getting back into the newsroom. But just kind of taking that moment and saying, I need a break, and using, sports for me have always been, that's it. That's my life, my work, my whatever. And kind of learning how to separate that when you work in sports can be a little bit difficult. So when we were in school, it was, okay, we're still hanging out with people we work with at RHU, but can we separate it? Does it have to be, oh my God, we had a really bad broadcast, let's talk about it for the next, 6 hours while we're actually supposed to be having fun? There's a way to do it, and I'm still trying to figure it out at 31, how to separate, because my best friends do work with me. So we all have the same stories. There's not a lot of separation. So using that kind of alone time to kind of prioritize while still giving your all has been a big thing. And that's a thing that not a lot of people get to learn in college. And again, you will spend the rest of your life trying to figure it out, but just kind of getting that like access to it, because obviously like student athletes kind of feel that, where, you know, they're there on a scholarship, but they have to prioritize the schoolwork, but they also owe the team all of their time. So it's kind of like that, where you're not really getting paid, but you're getting paid in experience. So you have to kind of act like, you know, how do I best prepare myself outside of work for work while keeping your mental stability intact? So that's definitely one of them. And kind of coupled with that is separating the friendship from the professional inside of RHU could be difficult. Everybody, you kind of forget that everyone working with you is in the same age range. So when you're giving each other feedback, you have to kind of come from it out of a place of, well, this person doesn't know everything, but they might know a little bit more than me, and not to take it personally, even if they're younger than you. You know, I work in a newsroom where when I started working there 5 years ago, everyone was in their low to mid 20s. And now most of us are in our early 30s. But now you have the next wave of younger kids who are coming in, who you look at and you're like, we're really not that much older than you, but we kind of are. And we have to figure out how to rectify that, while also knowing that this 22-year-old, their opinion matters, and they might actually know something that you don't, and you can't take offense to it. You just have to kind of listen to it and respect it, especially when you're going to be around them as often as you are in a newsroom with no windows. So those are probably my two biggest things, just kind of the time management and separating friendship from, you know, you can have both. You can have a working relationship with your or a friendship with managers, but you also have to know where that line of, oh, we just hung out on a Saturday, but now I have to listen to this person and respect that, even though I know that they're kind of, you know, they could be a little bit silly outside of work, that in this newsroom, they are the authority, whether they're older or younger or more experienced than you. And those are things that I didn't expect to get at a college radio station. And I don't think I'd be as far along or have gotten a job 2 months out of college without stuff like that.
So yeah, definitely some good life advice to take. I know I'm definitely taking notes when you alone tell me it. And I know yours hits home to me because I struggle with the time management and even a little bit of the whole manager versus inside.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing here, I think the big final question is, RHU gets a lot of new people every year. You know, there's from around the U.S., around the world. And a lot of people want to get started right away with what they do in sports. What is the best piece of advice you have for somebody brand new joining the station who wants to just make that instant impact right away?
Yeah, it's everybody comes in thinking, or you should come in thinking, I am going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to be the best at it. Because if you don't have confidence in yourself, then what's the point? Some people can show that differently, just because maybe some people aren't. I'm very introverted by nature. Like, I'm very confident, but I kind of tend to like hold off and assess the situation before I kind of, all right, let me see what kind of personalities I'm working with before I kind of, you know, try to assert my voice on something. So it kind of goes back to the way I did it. Was I went in knowing that I wanted to be on air and thinking that if that didn't work, then what was the point of me being there? But you kind of need to go in with you never know what's going to happen. You could be really good on air. You can have the best. People could tell you for your entire childhood, you have a radio voice. Like you're very eloquent. You've always been very easy to listen to, and you can go do it and you could hate it and think, oh, well, that was probably what I was supposed to do. I like sports. I figured I'd give it a try, but that's not necessarily what it's going to be. Or you can go in like me, who struggled a little bit. I didn't like talking out loud in class, but I was someone who always volunteered because I wasn't afraid to. But so I needed a little bit more work, and I figured, oh, well, there's people are already like passing me by. I'm never going to get my shot. But I waited. I put in my time behind the scenes. You know, I was at every meeting with suggestions, offering to help people. Hey, like, you need to write this script, but you also need to kind of go set up. Do you need help? Do you want me to pull this highlight for you? Just kind of always being there. So when the people in charge are thinking of like, all right, these two people, like, this person's really good and they should get this opportunity. But you know what? Alex over here has been working really hard, and it might fail miserably, but we have to give her a shot because she's put in the time and has shown that at the very least she's going to be prepared. And that's really the biggest thing, is if you're prepared to put in the work, eventually, like, I mean, I'm not going to be like sugarcoat it, like some people just don't make it, but you will make it somewhere. The hard work may not show up, and you may not be the next Yankees broadcaster, but you might find a fantastic job, writing scripts for SVP. That's not what I do, but he does read some of my notes, which whenever it happens, not to go off on a tangent, it's great. And Doris Burke said a few of my notes on air the other day, and she's amazing. So it's one of those things that if you asked me 10 years ago, would Doris Burke be confident enough in something I was putting out there, I would have been like, well, I'd rather be sitting next to Doris Burke, but yeah, that sounds great too. So with anything that anyone ever does, there could be anything. Like, Zion Williamson that injury could have been the end of his career, but he came back and in one game was like, oh, that's what we were waiting for. That's not how he drew it up. He wanted to have already been playing for 4 months, but I think just kind of not tempering expectations, but kind of almost expecting anything is more important than having like your own plan. Because those two can have kind of work together. You can have a plan, but you have to know that there are other factors. And it's something I didn't really learn and kind of process till after I left WRHU, because there were days where I was like I got an opportunity, but I feel like I could have gotten more. But that was also 19, 20-year-old me saying, 31-year-old me is like, you know what? It all worked out because I turned that no into a yes somewhere else. So I don't know if that really answered your question, because it was kind of all over the place, but I think that's kind of the point, is that you can go in with a expectation and it can all go what you think is horribly wrong and be really, really correct for you.
I definitely follow with it, and I think it's a good piece to end on. So once again, everyone, Alex Santiago, thank you for joining us as the Alumni of the Week.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and it was really nice to talk to you.